Due to overwhelming popular demand, the beard and the shirt are making a comeback. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about what is intelligence. And intelligence, this is one hell of a mysterious thing if you really think about it. I want you to start to think about intelligence at a much deeper level than most people conventionally do. We're not going to be talking about your standard cut and dry notion of intelligence here in this episode. We're going to be talking about some deep and very advanced stuff here. Think about it. You, as an individual, you have intelligence. Whatever your level is, doesn't matter. Whether you have a lot of it or a little of it, you have it. But what is it? And the question I'm interested in here is, I'm not interested in what is human intelligence. I'm not interested in how to quantify intelligence, the way that scientists are, for example. I'm interested in what is intelligence at the existential level. Because if you look inside yourself, you'll notice that you've got it. And you can notice when you're using it. And you can feel it functioning within you. But then what is that? I mean, obviously it's there. And it seems to be a function and a feature of the universe because, hey, you are the universe. You're a piece of the universe. So whatever you have, the universe must have by extension. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. But what I want you to notice by going inside of yourself and noticing your own intelligence at work is that intelligence is actually contrary to what many rationalists believe, which is that intelligence is just some sort of cut and dry mechanical process of using logic, that's not really what intelligence is at all. It's a much more intangible, abstract, mysterious sort of thing. How is it possible that you can behave intelligently? How is it possible you can have these intelligent thoughts? That's not a dumb, brute force mechanical process. That's not just some algorithm running in your head. It's not just some computer crunching away at some numbers. You can look at some situation in life with intelligence. What does that really mean? What is it really made out of? It's hard to pin down just what it is. And science gives us a lot of definitions that I could cite to you here. There are many scientists from AI research to neuroscience to social psychologists and clinical psychologists and developmental psychologists who've been studying this stuff for the last 100 years. And all of their definitions, you can go read them on Wikipedia, they're really unsatisfying. Because science's approach to this question is very reductionistic. They sort of think that, if we can just break down intelligence into some sort of behaviors, is a very behaviorist sort of approach to intelligence. In fact, many definitions that I was reading on Wikipedia that scientists come up with is something like the capacity of a system to basically navigate some sort of puzzle or complex maze. That's what they sort of reduce it down to. But there's something a little deeper going on than just that. But before we get to that, I want to take a little tangent, a little sad and interesting story that I encountered just for shits and giggles. One day I decided to go to 4chan. 4chan is a sort of a toxic online forum where a lot of conspiracy theories and online memes start off. And I'm not one to visit these sorts of places regularly, and I haven't actually been there maybe only a couple of times in my whole life. But I decided to go there because I just wanted to see what kind of crazy nonsense are people talking about on 4chan. So I go there, I'm looking around, just, it's just sort of like looking at a bad car accident, just for curiosity. But what interested me is there was a sub-forum there called Science and Mathematics. It's the /sci forum. So I go on that thinking that, maybe there's some interesting stuff about science here. So I started looking at what are they talking about science? And one of the things that blew my mind is that they're all talking about intelligence. Almost every post there is about intelligence in one form or another. Because the people that are there, I get the sense that they're sort of like high school kids or early college, university kids, mostly males by the sound of it. And they are interested in becoming good scientists and mathematicians. So it seems like they got this idea in their head that to be a great scientist or mathematician, you need to have very high IQ. And so everybody's talking about IQ and is your IQ high enough to become a good scientist? And they put graphs and studies and things like that, all this kind of evidence and data to suggest that if your IQ is below 150, you shouldn't even bother going into technical science fields or hard science fields like physical science, mathematics, computer science, engineering, these STEM fields. They say don't even bother going into it because you're not going to be able to become a great scientist or an engineer. And you're basically not going to be able to succeed in life because your IQ is too low. And then people are writing there and they're asking like, oh, is my IQ high enough to become a physicist or a mathematician or a computer programmer or something like this? And it's hilarious because some of the members are like, no, your IQ is not high enough. And they actually invented this jargony word called brainlet, which they use in a sort of demeaning way to say someone who doesn't have a high enough IQ. I think the way they define it is if your IQ is below 150, then you have no chance and you're a brainlet. This to me is just very amusing. It's both sad and amusing at the same time because it just shows you that these otherwise intelligent people, and I'm sure there are people there who have IQs above 150 that are posting their responses, but these otherwise intelligent people, how they have such a narrow-minded perspective on what intelligence is and just how toxic this is from a personal development standpoint. They really believe that their ability to succeed in life hinges upon their IQ, and they really believe that their ability to make breakthroughs within science is about their ability to pass some sort of silly IQ test. It's really, really short-sighted and very, very limiting. And the sad part about it is that they really don't understand where the creative achievements of the greatest scientists come from. They don't come from being able to solve some standardized IQ test. They come from true innovation, true creativity, being able to think outside the box, being able to jump between different paradigms, this sort of flexibility. That's really what you need if you want to be a breakthrough scientist, which is something other than IQ. People get stuck on this notion of IQ as if IQ is just some sort of feature of the universe. No, IQ is a very limited, narrow quantification of this larger thing called intelligence. And by the way, there are many different ways to measure intelligence. And IQ is very much a culturally biased, sort of westernized, rationalist version of how to measure intelligence. You see, it's precisely because intelligence is so abstract and mysterious and difficult to pin down that there's no good way to measure it. But of course, science, mechanistic science, again, here we go with materialism, is all about quantifying something. And if you can't quantify it, well, then it's not real. But of course, the scientist has a problem because the scientist is using his intelligence to actually do his science. But at the same time, the scientist doesn't have a clue what intelligence really is. So of course, that's quite embarrassing. So what we want to do is we want to create some tests and we want to create some simple, stupid formulas to reduce down what intelligence is into a couple of, simple numerical scores, something like that. And then we can use that to judge other people and yada, yada, yada. It starts to veer off into some bad and unproductive territories. The smartest thing you can do with an IQ test is not to take one. You see. And there's different kinds of intelligence. You can measure intelligence, for example, your ability to solve logical puzzles. You can use intelligence to test like your creative intelligence, your artistic intelligence, your kinesthetic intelligence, like how intelligent are you with your body, which, for example, might be manifested when you're doing karate or taekwondo or physical sorts of activities. A lot of people are who are good mechanics. They are good with their hands. That's another kind of intelligence. And then, of course, you have emotional intelligence, which is EQ. And I'm only scratching the surface of all the different types of intelligences that there really are. So you can see intelligence is a much broader spectrum of stuff. And even if you took all of those into account and you quantified all of those different types, that would still not be enough to account for what I'm talking about here as intelligence. And what's the common factor between all of those? And how come intelligence takes all these different forms and yet still there's intelligence? Like how come there's a certain intelligence for solving puzzles? Like you have to be pretty intelligent to solve a Rubik's Cube. That's one kind of intelligence. And that's mostly like the kind of stuff that IQ measures. And then you have to have a different kind of intelligence, like a musical intelligence, to be able to compose a good song or a good melody or something like that. And then you have to have another type of intelligence, interpersonal intelligence, to be able to be good at politics in large groups, to be a good leader. That takes another kind of intelligence, right? So what's the common thread there? Because we call all of these intelligences, but they're different kinds. Is there a commonality? Very interestingly, they've done studies, and what they've measured is the greatest predictor of your success in life overall and even in business? Not IQ, EQ, your emotional intelligence. Far, far, far more important. Not to mention which also, not just that, but also if we're talking about your happiness and your well-being in life, IQ is not what you should be worried about. You should be worried about EQ and other things like consciousness, awareness, and all their topics that I talk about on Actualized.org. And even if you're the type of person who says, Leo, I don't even care about my happiness, I don't care about intelligence, I don't care about relating to people, I'm just one of those nerdy scientists, and all I care about is just being good at my math or my science or my the artificial intelligence that I'm engineering or something like that. That's all I care about. And for that, I need IQ. You're still narrowing it down way too much. And ultimately, you're not going to have a good, successful life, even if you do manage to become a great mathematician or something. Because you know what? It's still very, very narrow. I've known mathematicians, professional mathematicians in universities who are deeply intelligent as far as mathematics goes, but then they're clueless about the larger picture of how mathematics fits into the larger reality. Being a great scientist means not just being good at your little narrow technical field. It means having a very big picture curiosity about the world, which is why the most genius scientists, they were holistic thinkers. People like David Bohm and Albert Einstein and Niels Bohr. These were not your typical technical scientists. These were true geniuses. And if you want to be a genius, what you need is you need to understand and you need to be able to tap into true intelligence at the existential level, not some stupid human metrics that society and culture has created, which will all be it will all turn into pseudoscience 100, 200 years from now. And even today, you can realize that it's so narrow and that you can go so much further. You can become such an incredible scientist or mathematician or engineer if you actually get to the root bottom of what intelligence is and you're really able to tap into true intelligence. But enough of that tangent. Let's talk about what intelligence is not. So obviously intelligence is not IQ. Also, intelligence is not logic or reason, which might be shocking to the rationalists. Also, intelligence is not knowledge, of course. Intelligence is not emergent phenomena. Intelligence is not a feature of the brain. Intelligence is not a human quality. And intelligence is not even biological or something that is exclusive to life. So then what is intelligence? Well, to really answer this, I want to talk to you about how I discovered for myself the essence of intelligence. But what I'm going to tell you here is you got to realize this is a very advanced topic. This is a topic that I'm going to talk about here that probably maybe like 1 in 100,000 human beings on the entire planet, maybe 1 in a million, will be able to understand what I'm talking about here. And it doesn't matter how high your IQ is, because some of this stuff I'm going to be talking about is going to just plain sound crazy. So I encourage you to listen with a very open mind. I'm going to be talking about intelligence from the non-dual enlightened perspective. And even if you've studied enlightenment and you've read books about enlightenment and non-duality, chances are you haven't heard anybody talking yet about intelligence, what intelligence really is. I've read dozens of books and I've heard dozens of videos, and I haven't really heard anybody talking about intelligence. Rather surprising to me. And that's because, man, this stuff sits really, really deep. To understand this stuff, you got to go really deep. And to talk about it then makes you sound very crazy. So please keep an open mind. So here's what happened with me. A couple of months ago, maybe 3 months ago, 4 months ago, I don't know, during one of my psychedelic trips, I experienced absolute infinity, the ultimate nature of reality. That reality is an infinite singularity. I've talked to you about that, so I'm not going to go into that too deeply here. I'm not going to bore you with that. We've covered that ground before. But what I realized during one of these trips, and I only vaguely remember it now, is I realized that this infinite singularity is also intelligent. And that was interesting to me. I didn't understand what that meant. It was just a very vague hunch. Like, why would it be intelligent? Because when I thought about absolute infinity, to me, it just seemed sort of like a brute force, dumb mechanical process, like reality just sort of everything gets spawned into being because it's completely unlimited and there's nothing to limit it from the outside. So therefore, everything has to basically manifest itself in all the ways that it does. And that's where you find yourself today, right now, standing in the middle of absolute infinity. Okay, but why is it intelligent? Is that, like, why would that be fundamental? And I didn't know, it was just sort of a hunch. But one of the things that I just sort of made a mental note of for the future is I said, I need to ask, the next time I'm really tripping deep, I need to ask, why are you intelligent? And I framed it in those words, why are you intelligent? Because it's sort of like asking the universe, why are you intelligent? That's what I wanted to ask. Now, of course, the universe, or the you here, is actually me, because I am the universe. When you're absolutely infinite, there's nothing other than you. It's completely one, it's completely non-dual. So it's not like you're really asking the question to somebody else. You're asking the question to yourself. Of course, it's not your little normal ego self, it's the universal self. You're really asking the question of the universe. You are the universe asking the universe, why am I intelligent? Now, that's a hell of a question to ask. And you might wonder, Leo, come on, I mean, is that really a legitimate question? How do you know that's even a legitimate question to ask? How do you know you can trust the answer if you even get one back? And what would it even look like to get an answer back? Isn't this now bordering on some sort of mystical, woo-woo, spiritual sort of stuff? Well, the truth is I didn't know if this was a legitimate question or not. I didn't know where it would take me. It was just something that, I just had a kind of a hunch about it. So I went with it. And then months passed and I forgot about this whole situation. I forgot about this question. It was just, deep in the back of my mind. And then during my retreat, which I recently did, the first half of the retreat, I did some deep tripping. And during one of these trips, I stumbled upon infinite intelligence, which I hadn't stumbled upon before, even though I had had all sorts of different realizations and insights, very deep insights about reality, but not infinite intelligence. And it took me completely by surprise. I didn't go into this trip expecting to ask this question or expecting to get some kind of answer. It just sort of blindsided me. And this was one of the most shocking, mind-fucking realizations that I've ever had in my entire life. So I do this trip on 5-MeO, and I'm just blindsided by this profound epiphany that infinite intelligence, I sort of go inside of myself. I get to the very root of what I am. Like, what am I and why is it there? And how did it get there? And I become conscious that I literally designed myself into being using infinite intelligence. This infinite intelligence has no form and no shape. And yet at the same time, it's all powerful. And it can literally manifest things into being. And so what I remember very vividly, and this just completely blew my mind, is I was sitting there on the floor and I was cognizing this pure formless intellect that, of course, I realized I was, because this was complete non-duality. And I have goosebumps right now on my hand just from thinking about this. I looked at my arm, this one right here, and I saw every single hair on my arm. And I became conscious that I literally designed, like engineered, every single hair that's on my arm, every molecule in every hair, every little nook and cranny, every curve, all of them just utterly perfect, designed by a master who has infinite knowledge of everything and infinite power and put them all into place. And then the sort of the crown jewel of this trip was that, of course, then I sort of asked the question even further, well, where did this infinite intelligence come from? Why is it here? And the response was that it created, it's so infinitely intelligent that it figured out a way to actually sort of like go back in time and create itself in the perfect, most delicious, strange loop ever. And that is how everything is here the way that it is. And then when you look around the room or you look out the window and you see whatever you see, even the most ordinary mundane stuff, you become conscious that it's designed with absolute infinite intelligence perfectly. It's the most perfect configuration of reality that could possibly be, and you are inside of it. Not only are you inside of it, but you yourself did it. That's the ultimate mindfuck. You did it, and then you forgot that you did it. And that was just amazing. After that, I sat on the floor, and in fact, this insight was so shocking and jolting that I just kind of sat there, awestruck, silently, just like traumatized, honestly traumatized by this insight. Because you see, if I designed myself, I'm the only thing in existence. There's no one I can turn to for help, for assistance. I was completely alone. It was like I was in this sort of infinite intelligence solipsism bubble where I designed everybody. I designed every single human being that exists. So even if I ask somebody, hey, am I going crazy now? Is this actually true, what I'm saying here? I couldn't really rely on their answer because I designed that person as well. It's all just a dream that I engineered. And it's absolutely crazy, right? It's crazy. It doesn't make any sense from the conventional materialist dualistic paradigm. How is it possible that this could be the case? Sounds like fantasy, sounds like just fiction, sounds like just a bad trip or some wonky trip gone wrong, right? Well, maybe not. I'll let you figure that out for yourself. But I'll tell you what I know is that human intelligence is just the tip of the iceberg of cosmic, universal intelligence. The entire universe is intelligent. This intelligence is pure intelligence, which means that it's formless, it's infinite, it's omnipresent, meaning it's non-localized, it's present in every square millimeter of the entire universe. And if there are multiple universes, then every universe that could ever be, the multiverse, everything. This intelligence is disembodied. And that's what intelligence really is. It's not some neurons in your brain. It's not some algorithm that's running away. It's not some behavioral stuff that you can do, some puzzle you can solve. It's just pure intelligence. But that is why it's so challenging, is because it's so abstract that you don't know how to get a handle on it. Notice that right now you are intelligent. I want you to go inside of yourself. Do this exercise. Go inside of yourself and feel your own intelligence on the inside. Your intelligence is that faculty within you that's allowing you to understand. Think about what that really is. That is not some mechanical process. Ask yourself, how is it possible that you can actually make sense of these concepts that I'm talking about? How is it possible that you're actually able to look at reality and make sense of it? This is not a simple thing. This is extraordinary. This is utterly mysterious and miraculous. We just take it for granted because, hey, we were sort of born with it and everybody around us can kind of do it. But think about it. This is an unbelievable gift. Like, it's a miracle that you can do this at all. How is it possible? How is it possible that some bouncing balls, if you are a materialist, and you believe that reality is just atoms and quarks bouncing around, just energy, random energy, nothing special about it. How is it possible that random balls bouncing around inside of a box can lead to you then understanding, having a deep understanding of some facet of reality? Even for you to be thinking of reality and holding it as a box with bouncing balls in it, that's already an act of intelligence for you to come up with that. Now, of course, the materialists, they have all their excuses and justifications and stories for how this works. Leo, through random mutations, over time, evolution, blah, 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 millions and billions of years. And then, it's not so mysterious that you can have intelligence. But what is intelligence? How do you get intelligence from just balls bouncing around in a box? How does that produce intelligence? Consider that your paradigm is wrong. Consider that intelligence is fundamental to reality and is not an emergent property that comes about billions of years later after much evolution. Notice that intelligence working inside you. Whatever you're noticing there, that's a little tiny, 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 tiny sliver of cosmic intelligence. You're looking at just the tip of the iceberg. And that intelligence, really, it's not yours. And if you look closely within yourself, your intelligence is not yours. You're not doing intelligence. Intelligence is doing you. If you are an intelligent person, you have a high IQ, you love to take credit for your intelligence, as though you're doing it. You're this genius who can solve this puzzle. But really, no. It's a gift that you've been given. And of course, you can also cultivate this gift. It's not static. You can definitely be much more intelligent than you used to be. And one of those ways to be hyper intelligent is to be able to tap into infinite intelligence. Because if you think that intelligence is just the thing that's inside of a human brain, the little tip of the iceberg, then that's all you'll ever have in life, is just that. That's what most people have. Most scientists use only that little tip. Whereas if you develop methods for tapping into infinite intelligence, like what I'm talking about here, you see that it's this much, much, much larger thing. And then you're able to tap into it. And from it, you're able to pull ideas, creative ideas, which are so brilliant that you could never dare to take credit for them yourself, because you see that it's not your little ego who's doing it. Even these words that I'm telling you right now are being deciphered by your mind instantly for you. You're not doing it. Your ego's not responsible for it. But of course, intelligent people tend to be very arrogant because they tend to assume that intelligence is something that they have, and that only they have, and that only human beings have, and that nobody else in the universe has it. And certainly it could never be a feature of the universe as a whole. Maybe some aliens on some other planet have it if they're also as evolved as we are. But otherwise, no, Leo, no. Intelligence can't just be floating around in the universe. That sounds like nonsense. Well, it might sound like nonsense, but that is the case. And you can become conscious of that. What do I mean precisely by infinite intelligence? That's difficult to pin down. It's infinite and it's all-powerful. And what I mean by all-powerful is that actually it is the source and cause of all of creation and existence. Now you might wonder, how is that possible? Because power, you would think, that's like a physical thing. But intelligence, that's like sort of a soft, fuzzy, intellectual, mental thing. So how can the intellect actually be powerful? After all, Leo, it's not like I can move a rock with my intellect. I need a bulldozer to move a big rock or to bulldoze down a big mountain or something. I need a bulldozer. I can't do it with my intellect. Well, consider that maybe you can't do it with your intellect because you only have this little bit of intellect that you have access to as a human being. And that actually, if you had access to infinite intelligence, you could be so intelligent that you could actually create anything you want out of scratch because you're so intelligent. Just think about that for a moment. Imagine that you're so intelligent. I'm not talking about infinite intelligence metaphorically. I'm talking about literally. You have an infinite degree of intelligence. So your intelligence times infinity. That's what I'm talking about. You are so intelligent that you can actually figure out a way to manifest things out of pure emptiness without any physical, mechanical means, and that you could even figure out a way to go back in time and create yourself, to break all physical laws and all logical laws. Because in fact, you invented all the physical and logical laws. They're not really physical. You thought them up using infinite intelligence. And then, of course, you put yourself in the simulation so that now you're limited by them, or at least it appears as though you are when you're a human being. I want you to really comprehend the significance of what I mean by infinite intelligence. I want you to imagine that you designed and engineered, architected every single hair on your head. And you architected all the lengths of every hair, all the orientations, the rotations, the positions, the coordinates, everything, all the molecules and proteins that go into it. You personally, individually assembled every single protein. You folded every protein perfectly out of all the subatomic particles that make it up, all the molecules, all the amino acids. You folded it all up perfectly. You thought up of how all the proteins need to be so that the hair is protruding in that particular way, has a particular shape, particular orientation, serves a particular function on your head to protect you from wind, water, the sun, whatever else, because your hair has a purpose. There's nothing on your body that doesn't have a purpose. You designed all your nails. You designed the skin, every cell of your skin. You actually, in fact, are designing right now every single cell, all the trillions of cells. Every single cell is intelligently designed. Every process in the cell, all the molecules moving through the DNA, replicating, doing all its stuff, all of that, you engineered every single piece of that so that it perfectly fits with the environment that you're in, so that you can survive in this environment, so that you can hunt and you can have sex and you can be social and political, so that you can lie to people when you need to, so you can be sneaky because that is necessary for your survival, and so that you can do all the stuff that human beings can do. And you put yourself in this particular time on this particular planet. Of course, you design the entire planet, all the ecosystems, all the millions of different species that exist. You design them all so they fit together perfectly in harmony so the planet can coexist the way that it does. All of it fits together. Of course, you have to design the rest of the solar system and the universe, all the physical laws and the logical laws so that it all fits together. You designed all the neurons, every single neuron inside your head so that it fires perfectly, so that each one of those produces some particular effect that makes you move your arm and grab something or speak something or have some original idea, all of that, and you're doing it right now, but you're not aware of it. That's what I mean by infinite intelligence. Imagine that you designed Albert Einstein. You designed his whole body, all the cells in it, all the hair, everything. You designed his entire life. You designed Albert Einstein's life perfectly so that he would be born at precisely the right time, so that he would have the discoveries that he had. You designed all the neurons and everything there so that he can learn the stuff he needs to learn in that particular era that he was in, so that he can come up with his theories, so that his theories could contribute to the larger scientific knowledge of mankind, and those could be used to build technology and all that. So you perfectly engineered all this, but you didn't just engineer it there locally for Albert Einstein. You engineered this from the very beginning, before the Big Bang. You see, you had such infinite intelligence that you could see, like, imagine the perfect chess-playing AI. You know, a chess-playing AI needs to be able to see thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of moves into the future in order to play a good game of chess. So imagine if you had an AI that was actually infinite in its intelligence. It could see an infinite number of moves ahead. So that's what you did. You planned every single facet of everything together so that it would work in this harmonious, intelligent manner. And so here you are, and you find yourself right now inside of this infinite intelligence. And of course, the kicker to all that is, of course, that you would also be intelligent enough to know that you don't let the human being have access to all this. The human being is not God. The human being is just a little creation, a little version of God. And that's what you are here. That's why you can think. And that's why your thoughts have creative abilities as a human being. Now, of course, your thoughts as a human being, they have very limited creative abilities. So can you just spawn a new planet into existence? No, because you don't know how, because you're not even close to infinite intelligence as a human being. Very, very limited is your intelligence. But I want you to imagine that infinite intelligence can literally spawn a planet into existence if it wants to. In fact, it can spawn the entire universe into existence. And that's what it did. And it has no limits to it whatsoever. So when I'm saying that it's all powerful, the power and the intelligence, they're both infinite and they go hand in hand. It's precisely all powerful because it's so intelligent that there are no limits to its intelligence and no limits to its power. It's so powerful that it can even go back in time and design itself. So I want you to picture an image of an engineer who is actually engineering his own body in this sort of Escher style where the hand is drawing itself. Ta-da! That's how you got here. That's what all of this is. Why do you think it works so beautifully? Have you ever wondered, by the way, why reality works so beautifully? A lot of rational and scientific people overlook this. And they just dismiss it and say, oh, well, it's just kind of random. Through evolution, it would have happened this way. But also there's another category of thinker, philosopher, even scientist, who actually does appreciate the design of this whole thing. Like it's incredibly well designed. It works. How does it work on so many levels? It works from the subatomic particle level all the way up to the molecular level, to the cellular level, to the basic biological level, then to the ecological level, to the social level, to the political level, like every single level, to the cosmic level. The whole thing works. And it works without a single flaw. You know, reality doesn't have a bug in it. It doesn't have any glitches. How is this possible? Have you ever thought about this? I mean, it's remarkable when you really think about it. The problem is that most people take it totally for granted, and they just sort of assume that, well, I mean, how else could it be? It's amazing. I want you to start to really appreciate what we're talking about here. Now, of course, the objection is, but Leo, how can intelligence have power? Power is physical, not intellectual. Well, first of all, notice that in our world, power is shifting more and more towards the intellectual as we become more advanced. Have you noticed this? People who are good at manual labor, they are some of the worst paid people on the planet. Who are the highest paid people? It's actually the people who sit at the very top who utilize their intellect in order to arrange and architect and engineer structures, blueprints, hierarchies, organizations. It's the CEOs. It's the brilliant people like Nikola Tesla, the innovators, the inventors, people like Albert Einstein, the theoreticians. Notice that our society is giving more and more value to these people because they can generate more value. Because what's more valuable than just being able to push a rock with a bulldozer is actually the organization of stuff that's going on. If you really want to create something, the creation of it is really in the organization of it, not the physical building blocks, which are not nearly as important. And of course, you got to understand that those physical building blocks, which you're taking for granted, they also need to be perfectly organized so that they can become good and effective building blocks. Imagine if I just gave you a piece of paper and I said, hey, here, design a universe from scratch, beginning from, let's say, quantum particles. Design it from scratch so that it works perfectly. Could you do it? Could the best quantum scientists, quantum physicists that currently exist do it? No, not even close, like not even remotely close. There wouldn't even be a theory of how to go about doing this. You see, humans are mostly what we're doing is we're just imitating Mother Nature. We're just sort of like copying little pieces here and there, and we're trying to decipher. And it takes us hundreds of years or thousands even of years, just to decipher some piece of nature. Like we look at an insect wing and we spend hundreds of years studying how it works just to imitate it. And even then, all our imitations are very poor imitations. Have you noticed this? Scientists still, with all our modern technology, they still can't create a mosquito, a mechanical mosquito. Can't do it. Not even close yet. Now, of course, in the future, we'll definitely be able to do it. But what is it that's going to enable us to do that? Knowledge, understanding, or actually, really, it's the source of the knowledge. It's intelligence. So in a sense, if you're really interested in technology and science, really what you should be interested in is intelligence at large. Not narrow versions of intelligence, not knowledge, but this existential infinite intelligence is what I'm telling you about, because that's the source of all this stuff. So how is it that intelligence can be powerful? Well, if you stop thinking of the universe as a mechanical clockwork or just a dumb box with dumb particles bouncing around, and you start to think of the universe as a giant mind, which I've talked about in the past, then you see that if all there is a giant mind, which is consciousness, and it's manifesting everything, then intelligence can be a feature of that mind. And in fact, it's one of the most important features. That's how creation gets made in this marvelous, ordered, beautiful, intelligent way that it is. Intelligence really is reality's capacity to manifest itself intelligently. Now, of course, you'll say, Leo, that's a circular definition. You just defined intelligence using the word intelligence. That's precisely right. That's not a mistake, because intelligence is irreducible. And so you're not going to get a satisfactory definition through words. Words here are going to start to lose traction as we keep talking. I'm going to be using words, but don't take my words too literally. They're really pointers to actual infinite intelligence. Actual infinite intelligence is formless. There's nothing really you can say about it. It's just fucking intelligent as fuck. You can think of intelligence as creativity, the capacity for novelty, and you can think of intelligence, rather than think of it as something that the brain does, think of it as the order that creation exhibits. Being, everything you see as being gets created in an intelligent manner, and that's really what intelligence is. And then if you think about, well, what are thoughts? How come my mind and brain are intelligent? Well, your thoughts are also being. Everything is being. Your thoughts are being. Your thoughts are being manifested right now. Every single thought. You're not creating your thoughts. The universe is creating your thoughts. You don't know what your next thought is going to be. I don't even know what my next thought is going to be, and I'm sitting here and I'm talking about some rather intelligent sounding stuff. If you want to give me the benefit of the doubt. If you don't want to, if you're not going to say I'm crazy. So, my thoughts right now are getting manifested by infinite intelligence. So being is getting manifested in an intelligent manner. And that's what gives rise to intelligent human heads, to put it crudely. Because being is all there is, being orders itself intelligently. Intelligence really isn't separate from being, it's an aspect of being. And you can see that by really becoming attuned to just the intelligence you see on a leaf. You can take a leaf off a tree and look at just how intelligently designed that leaf is. Now, I know you have a lot of objections as a materialist about evolution. I'm going to talk about evolution in a minute. Don't get your panties in a twist. We will address the evolution question. So what I'm saying here is that even inanimate objects are intelligent. A rock, a mountain, a river, a sun, it's all intelligent. Not in the sense that a river can think or a rock can think. That's not what I mean. That's the old paradigm. Throw that out of your mind. Intelligence is not something that an object possesses. Intelligence is a field, like the field of gravity. Look, you have no problem accepting that the field of gravity is invisible, right? It's invisible, it's abstract, and yet here it is, it acts, obviously it acts and it does what it does. But scientists still haven't really determined what gravity is or how it really works. Nobody really knows, but we just know it's there, and it's a field, and we know it's non-localized, it's everywhere. So now start to think of intelligence exactly in that same way. Now, the mistake would be to think that, oh, that means that rocks can think. No, rocks can't think in that way that you're thinking. Now, of course, you might have an objection. You might say, oh, Leo, what about all the dumb stuff that happens in the world? How do you account for that? Well, that's the kicker, is you see that even the so-called dumb stuff, the stupidity that you see on YouTube, let's say, human stupidity. And you might say, oh man, but if the universe has infinite intelligence, how come humans are so stupid? Most of them, at least. Well, you have to understand that even the universe is designed with such infinite intelligence that even the dumbness that exists is intelligent. Those people are behaving in dumb ways precisely because that's what is necessary to sustain the harmony of the entire universe. You see? Those are consequences of the design. The problem is that you as a little human being, your mind is so limited, your intellect is so limited that you can't see a trillion moves ahead the way that infinite intelligence can. You are sort of like a bad chess AI program who can only see 5 moves ahead. And so to you, it seems like, oh, my opponent made a really dumb move. He's sacrificing his queen. And I'm just going to steal his queen. Oh, he's such a dumbass. But what you can't see is that your opponent is actually infinitely intelligent. It can see 50 moves into the future that you can't see, so it knows that it's going to sacrifice its queen here, but in the end, it's going to checkmate you. That's the problem. The problem with rational people is that they're intelligent, but their intelligence is it's high enough that they become arrogant. They think that they figured out all of reality, but it's not intelligent enough to see 100, 1,000 moves ahead to see how all the other stuff fits in perfectly into this holistic, harmonious picture. Because if you really saw that, man, that would utterly blow your mind. That would be the realization of a lifetime. To really understand how ingeniously, infinitely intelligent existence is. So in a sense, what I'm saying here is that consciousness can think matter into being. But you have to take this word think rather loosely, because consciousness doesn't think in the sort of manner that you're used to. And this word matter, of course, you also have to take it very loosely. Words are starting to break down here. Now, let's address this evolution question, because you're probably thinking, Leo, so are you a creationist now? Is that what you are? You become a creationist? Is that where all these psychedelics and all this enlightenment stuff and all this woo-woo stuff has taken you? Now you're into intelligent design, because that's what you're talking about, right? What about evolution? We have all this evidence for evolution. Are you contradicting all of that? I'm not contradicting it. First, you have to make a distinction between intelligent design versus creationism. The sort of creationism that you see very popular among many fundamentalist Christians. And there's no doubt that there are many sneaky fundamentalist Christians who will use science to sort of attack itself. They will cherry pick evidence from within the scientific community and use it against the scientific community and try to undermine evolution in order to advance ideas of intelligent design and to advance their biblical notions. And they quote from the Bible. And also, that's not what I'm talking about here. I would call that creationism. So distinguish that from intelligent design. So is the universe intelligently designed? Absolutely. Beyond a shadow of doubt. And you can prove that to yourself by becoming conscious of the intelligence directly. And that's possible. That's not a belief. That's not something you have to take on faith. But now the question of, and by the way, before I go on to evolution, I should mention that the creationists are wrong. All right, the creationists are self-deluded. So what the creationists are doing is they're reacting against some of the developments within science, which they feel is encroaching upon their territory, the biblical theological territory. It's encroaching upon their notions of God. And that justifiably scares them because they don't want to lose notions of God and all this. And they also have intuitions about intelligent design because they can see and they can intuit the intelligence, but they don't really know how to explain it very well. And they don't have any direct experience of it. They haven't become directly conscious of it. They take it on as a dogma. So they're defending that dogma. They're wrong. They're making many epistemic mistakes. So you, as the rationalist and scientifically minded person that you are, of course, you're right to criticize them when they do that sort of stuff. But make a distinction. That's not what I'm doing here. That's not the place that I'm arguing from. In fact, I sort of have an axe to grind against Christians because, quite frankly, most Christians are very, very deluded in their understanding of reality, and they're very dogmatic. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not a Christian. I don't believe in Christianity, and I don't subscribe to Christianity. I don't really read much Christianity, although there's some valuable stuff in certain Christian writings, but only if it's interpreted at a very high level, very metaphorically, very, very abstractly, which most people do not know how to do because Christianity is extremely corrupt. Christianity has basically been seized by the devil and been turned into an egoic falsehood perpetuation machine, same way that Islam has for the most part. So that's that. Now, about evolution. So what about evolution? Well, evolution, of course, exists. At least from our limited human perspective. Because you see, what science is all about, science is about causal explanations. And of course, every object in the entire universe, and the entire universe as itself, is infinitely caused. So this is a problem for science because science is trying to understand cause and effect, but every object has an infinite number of causes and effects. You understand this? Most scientists don't understand this. Take any object, take a little stone that you find lying, like a pebble lying on the sidewalk. That pebble, become conscious that pebble has an infinite number of causes. There's an infinite chain of causation that led to that pebble laying there on the sidewalk, stretching back all the way to the Big Bang and everything before the Big Bang. There's an infinite chain. And there's an infinite chain that comes after the pebble, which the pebble is a part of. And also, this chain is not linear and one-dimensional, but it's actually infinitely dimensional. So that pebble, its causes are not just coming from one direction, like somebody placed, you might think, well, the pebble is there because some guy was walking around with a leaf blower and he blew the pebble and now it's laying there on the sidewalk. Yes, that might be true, but that's just one factor out of an infinite number of other factors that are there at the same time, all acting upon it. Because, see, yes, the guy with the leaf blower was blowing on it, blew the pebble, but at the same time, there was also wind. There was the sun. There was gravity from another planet, from Jupiter. All of it was acting to place that pebble exactly where it's lying. There's an infinite number of causes in every instance. In every microsecond, there's an infinite number of causes. Every atom in the known universe is acting upon that pebble right this second to cause it to sit precisely where it's sitting. So that's an infinite number of causes just in this moment of time. But then there's an infinite number of causes, of course, stretching all the way back. So you see we have this not a one-dimensional line of causation, but it's just like a volume, an infinite dimensional volume of causation just for that one little pebble. So yeah, it's complicated, you see. That's the problem, is that science is trying to just unravel something that's so much bigger than itself that it's always losing sight of the bigger picture. So evolution, of course, in that sense, in a linear sort of sense, yes, it exists in that, of course, dinosaurs evolved into birds and stuff, and then mammals evolved into monkeys, and monkeys into humans. Yeah, we have evidence for it. It's all good. It works. We've proven evolution within, even within dog species, within cat species, selective breeding. That's evidence of evolution right there. Very obviously, also it's very easy to demonstrate evolution within fruit flies and within viruses and bacteria. Quite easy to do. They've done it lots of times. So the evidence for evolution is indisputable. But what you have to understand is that evolution, what drives evolution? Evolution is a process that itself is intelligently designed. And I'm actually going to have a whole episode a very important episode called probably What is Evolution, where we're going to talk about evolution and what it really is. It's not what they teach you it is. It is not happening through random mutation. The mutations are highly intelligent. Highly intelligent. If evolution was truly happening through random mutation, you'd have nothing. You'd have crap. It would just be noise. You actually cannot create something significant and marvelous and highly functional without intelligence. But that's a topic for another time. I have a lot to say about that topic, but this episode is already running long, and I wish I could go into it. I want to go into it. Believe me, I know you're interested in understanding what the true nature of evolution is, but for now, you're just going to have to trust me that evolution is happening through intelligence. And actually, if you go into science, the latest science on evolution is starting to show you, like science within epigenetics and so forth, it's starting to show that it's not random. There's a deep intelligence at work. And as more evidence is collected over the next 100 years, this notion of random mutation is going to be completely blown out of the water, and it's going to go alongside some of the other silly ideas that are confined to the dustbin of science history. So what I'm saying here is that infinite intelligence, it doesn't contradict evolution. In fact, really all that evolution is not confined to DNA, by the way. Everything is evolving all the time. Evolution is simply the infinite causal chain that is all of reality. So really what infinite intelligence does, so if you think about what evolution is, it's sort of like if we're playing a chess game, every move on the chess game, every piece that's moved, one step or one move, that is like sort of one increment of evolution. Let's say it's equivalent to 1 second in the whole evolutionary time span of the last 4 billion years on this planet. It's just one move, then another move, another move, another move, another move, right? Each one is a second, one time increment. And what infinite intelligence is it is that played through from the beginning to end, all instantaneously at once, because this infinite intelligence is not bound by time. It has no limits on it whatsoever, so it can think through every possible move. So imagine a chess game with an infinite number of chess pieces and an infinite number of squares in an infinite number of dimensions, and this infinite intelligence is playing all the moves simultaneously at once. In fact, it knows every single game that could be played ever on this chessboard, and so it just instantly knows everything. And also, it is the source of all the chess pieces, the board, every single move. It's all happening virtually inside of this mind. Some mind-blowing stuff. But then when you as a human look at it, because you are so time-bound, you're only living in this little corner of the universe on this little rock floating around in space, orbiting around the sun, and you only live for 100 years. So all you can see a few of the moves on this chessboard. And to you, it looks linear because it's like, well, the knight moved here, the queen moved here, the king moved here, the bishop moved here, the pawn moved here. All you can see is just a few moves. Maybe all you see is 100 moves in your lifetime. But what you don't realize is that it's an infinite game played in infinite dimensions with infinite pieces. So we'll talk about that later, about evolution. And I'm excited about that episode as well. And I'll have some actual evidence and some really I'll present some technical arguments for my claims about evolution. I'm not just going to tell you that I experienced it on some psychedelic trip. I'm actually going to cite some scientific evidence for you, and I'm going to present some more tangible arguments for those of you who are sort of hard-nosed like that and like that kind of stuff. Yeah. So continuing on, I want to introduce a new vocab word for you, and that's the ancient Greek word called nous, N-O-U-S. It rhymes with mouse. It's a little difficult to pronounce. Nous. What does this word mean? From Wikipedia, here's its definition. Quote, sometimes it's equated to intellect or intelligence. It's a term for the faculty of the human mind which is necessary for understanding what is true or real. End quote. So that's a concept that goes back to the early Greek philosophers. Very early. Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, and even before Socrates. In fact, as I was doing research for this episode here, I wanted to go back and I'm thinking to myself, man, somebody in the past, some great sage or philosopher must have stumbled upon this infinite intelligence idea that I stumbled upon independently for myself here. I didn't read this in any book what I'm talking about. This really, like I'm saying, it really blindsided me. I wasn't expecting it at all. And the second thing that I wasn't expecting is I wasn't expecting to find a perfect explanation of what I'm explaining here from a Greek philosopher over 2,500 years ago. But that's exactly what I found in Wikipedia. So here we go. I'm going to present a quote to you from Anaxagoras, whose dates are 510 to 428 BC. 2,500 years ago, basically. He was a pre-Socratic philosopher. That means before Socrates. So he was one of the earliest Western thinkers. Now, listen to what he says about nous and about intelligence, because this guy had it figured out. Look at this. Quote, all other things partake in a portion of everything, while nous is infinite and self-ruled, and is mixed with nothing, but is alone, itself by itself. For if it were not by itself, but were mixed with anything else, it would partake in all things if it were mixed with any. For it is the thinnest of all things and the purest, and it has all knowledge about everything and the greatest strength. And nous has power over all things, both greater and smaller, that have soul. End quote. So that's everything I've been telling you in a nutshell. And this guy got it. He wasn't just doing idle philosophy. In order to write what he wrote here, he had to actually experience the true essence of pure intelligence, or nous. And as he says here, it's infinite, it's self-ruled, it's formless, because at the same time, it's not mixed with anything, which means it's separate from everything, but also it's infusing everything. So it's a field in the same way that gravity is a field. Gravity, you might say, is similar to what he's describing because, in a sense, it's not mixed with anything. Gravity is separate from everything, but on the other hand, gravity is acting upon everything. And notice what he says about how strong it is. It has the greatest strength. It's the thinnest and the purest of all things, which is what I'm describing. So you can't really articulate it very well. And it's all powerful. Another gem that I found on Wikipedia as I was researching this is the following one. Quote, the more strictly Aristotelian Muslims, in particularly Avempace, that's a difficult one to pronounce, Avieros, I'm not sure how to pronounce it per se. They were both, by the way, just as an aside, they were both Islamic Muslim philosophers in the sort of golden age of Islam, probably 1,000 years ago or so. And so anyways, they wrote about how one could conjoin oneself with the active intellect, thus attaining philosophical nirvana, end quote. That word active intellect is very important because that's a word from Aristotle, because Aristotle also wrote about the nous, and he made various distinctions between the active intellect and other kinds of intellect and the psyche and so forth. It gets rather technical and complicated, but what they're saying here is that it's possible to conjoin oneself with the active intellect, which is what I'm calling infinite intelligence, thus attaining philosophical nirvana. That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what I experienced. Philosophical nirvana, metaphysical orgasm. Because you become the infinite intelligence. And using this infinite intelligence, of course, that's what you use to understand everything. So people sometimes wonder, well, Leo, but what about enlightenment? Maybe enlightenment is just an illusion. How do you know? Maybe it's just a belief system. Maybe you're just hallucinating. After all, how is it possible to know these things? A human being can't know these things. That's right, a human being cannot know these things. But what you're assuming is that you're a human being. Drop that assumption and then become conscious of infinite intelligence, realize you are infinite intelligence, and then use that infinite intelligence to understand the structure of the entire universe. Sounds impossible. Sounds crazy, right? Sounds crazy. Sounds like some wishful thinking. But then again, people have done it. Anaxagoras did it. I did it. I can even tell you which tools you can use to do it. Use some 5-MeO-DMT. It'll help you get there. Maybe not on the first try. Maybe you'll need a few tries. But yeah, it's accessible. And you don't need to do psychedelics to get there. You can get there through yoga, meditation, other stuff. Of course, this sits very deep, so you might need to do 10, 20 years of yoga to get there. I don't know. Depends. Depends on how talented you are. Depends on how dedicated you are, how open-minded you are. There are many factors here. But I think very few people have accessed this sort of stuff, so which is why it's not written about very often. It's not talked about. You might wonder, why isn't everybody talking about this? Well, how the fuck are you supposed to explain this to people? You really expect that someone's going to go on CNN or on ABC or some YouTube channel that shoots 5-minute videos about stupid stuff, and they're going to explain this to you in a convincing way? No, not even close. Not even close. We're talking about extremely advanced stuff. Hell, I myself wouldn't have believed this just a few years ago. Maybe even a few months ago, I wouldn't have believed it. So we're talking about cosmic nous, cosmic intelligence here. Now you might wonder, Leo, what's the difference between intelligence and consciousness? Because I shot an episode recently, just last week, about what is consciousness. And there, it might seem like I've been talking about similar stuff there as I am here. Well, there's differences. So, yes, intelligence is formless and omnipresent just the way that consciousness is. And really, they're the same thing. They're not separate. What I'm talking about here is a facet, an aspect, maybe that would be better, an aspect of consciousness. So of course, everything is still consciousness. I'm not saying there's two substances now. I'm not saying there's consciousness and then there's intelligence. No, consciousness, one of the aspects of consciousness is that it's intelligent. It's infinitely intelligent. But see, it's important to make this distinction because it's possible to become conscious of consciousness, but not become conscious yet of the intelligence, the infinite intelligence of consciousness. That's an additional wrinkle that you may or may not cognize or realize when you grasp what consciousness is. See, so it's tricky. That's why I say there's sort of different levels of it, different degrees of realization. Because, and the reason I say that is very practical, because that's what happened to me, is that I did realize what consciousness was before I realized what infinite intelligence is. So for me, the first was consciousness. I realized that. And I realized that in various ways, many times, and there were many depths to it. And then when I got deep enough there, then this sort of other dimension of consciousness opened up, this other facet opened up to me. And I was able to explore that. And man, there was a huge difference from a personal perspective. I mean, ultimately they're one, but there's a huge difference because this is like one huge mindfuck here, and then there's like a second huge mindfuck there. And they're both radical, deep mindfucks. All right, let's answer some FAQs and objections. So first question, but Leo, rocks are not intelligent the way that I am. Isn't this silly? You're claiming that rocks are intelligent. Look, again, be careful here. Just like with the What is Consciousness episode, you have to be careful not to get your paradigm backwards. A rock, I'm not saying a rock has a mind and it can think. Stop thinking of intelligence as one's ability to think or even brain power. That's not what intelligence is. If you think intelligence is brain power or IQ or your ability to think, obviously a rock doesn't have that ability. But when I say it's intelligent, what I'm saying is that the being of the rock is imbued and permeated with intelligence. In the same way we say that gravity is acting upon the rock, even if the rock is just laying there and doing nothing. Gravity is still acting upon it. Again, this is hard for the materialist to understand because his paradigm is backwards. He has a faulty definition of what intelligence is. And so he's running that definition, he's getting the wrong results. When he applies that definition to rocks, it makes it look absurd. So of course he has to deny what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is not absurd if you change your paradigm and you look at reality as a giant mind. And this giant mind can create dumb objects. They only appear dumb to us as human beings because we care about thinking, and a rock is not going to come up with Einstein's theory of general relativity for you. It can't think. It can't solve a Rubik's Cube. A rock can't do that. But then again, that's you imposing your standards on the rock. The intelligence of the rock is that it's supposed to lay there and be a rock. It's not supposed to get up and sing and do a dance for you, a jig, to amuse you. That's not the function of a rock. The rock was designed with infinite intelligence to be a rock and to behave like a rock. And so in a sense, the rock was designed to be humble, not arrogant like yourself. And that's exactly what the rock needed to be. Because ultimately in the big picture, you need dumb objects in order for smart human beings to be able to clothe and shelter themselves and survive and live and have a solid earth to stand upon. You need rocks. So in a sense, your human intelligence is dependent upon the rock intelligence. It's the order of the whole system is what we're calling intelligence. I once heard Sadhguru, Sadhguru, this YouTube yogi? I once heard Sadhguru talking about how there's more, he said something along the lines like, there's more intelligence in a flower than there is in your head or something like that. I'm just paraphrasing. I don't know if that's exactly what he said, but along those lines. And I remember I was listening to this a few years ago and I'm like, dude, what the fuck are you talking about? There's no intelligence in a flower. Now I understand what he meant. It made no sense to me because my definition of intelligence was that intelligence is something that happens inside the head. But then I realized, no, that's wrong. Where did that definition come from? I just assumed, I took that definition for granted. The only reason I think that intelligence happens in the head is because I'm very fucking selfish and I'm looking at the whole world from my little personal point of view. So to me, all that exists is myself and my little ego. And so from that point of view, I'm the most intelligent thing that there is. And of course, that's utter arrogance and utter stupidity in retrospect. But nonetheless, that's how rationalists think. It's a deep arrogance. They can't see outside themselves. They can't see the larger thing that they're a part of because they're not holistic thinkers. They're left brain thinkers. Left brain thinking is, by definition, not holistic. It's linear. It's analytical. It's fragmentary. It fragments and breaks reality apart to pieces. It really, it's a tool of the ego. And if you want to transcend the ego, you need to tap into your right intuitive, holistic brain capacities. So Sadhguru is exactly right. There is, in a sense, more intelligence in a flower than there is inside your test, your IQ test scores. If you have a 200 IQ or whatever you think you have, that's impressive. Well, a flower is way more impressive when you really look at a flower. How much intelligence there is in a single flower, in a single leaf, in a single rock, in anything like that. But Leo, what about ants? Ants aren't intelligent like me. Look at an ant. Spend a few hours on a Sunday afternoon looking at an ant running around doing its thing. Look at how much intelligence there is in a single fucking ant. It will awe-strike you if you really do it. If you really look at an ant, see what's there. Our most fancy supercomputers, all the computing power of Google and Microsoft and Facebook combined, and all the human intelligence that goes with it, could not create an ant that functions like an ant. Couldn't do it. I don't just mean mechanically. I mean the whole shebang, from the very beginning, from the ground up all the way to the top. Like designing the ant's psychology, designing the ant's sociology, designing the system such that all the molecules are moving perfectly. You design the molecules from very beginning so that all of it can build up to create this ant. All the cells, all the DNA, all that is happening, of course. All the biological functions of the ant. Of course, we can't do any of that. But even if you could, that would still be only scratching the tip of the iceberg, because you also need to think about the psychology of the ant, how the ant relates to all the other ants, how the ant moves, the software that's governing the ant, the intelligence that's inside the ant. It's not mechanical software, it's intelligent. How the ant is building its ant colony underground and architecting it. The ant is using intelligence to build structures underground to reproduce. I mean, it's just utterly astounding, the intelligence that goes into an ant. But then, of course, not just that, you also need to have the intelligence to think of how this ant colony is going to fit in with the environment that it's in, with the ecosystem, with the rain, with the sun, with the radiation coming from the sun, with tornadoes and hurricanes and the vegetation, all that is growing, and with animals that are moving around, ant eaters who are going to come and attack these ants and eat them if they're not smart, they don't have defenses against that. Other ant colonies they have to fight with, spiders and insects and all of this, and all up the chain, the entire ecological thing, the entire earth which can sustain these ants. All of that has to be thought through. It doesn't happen by accident. Hello? It's extraordinary intelligence. It's just not the kind of intelligence that you're used to. It's not the human form of intelligence. So it's really improper to think of intelligence as like, ants are dumber than birds are smarter than cockroaches, and then dogs are smarter than birds, and then chimps are smarter than dogs, and then humans are smarter than everybody else. That's the wrong way to think about it. Intelligence is everywhere, and there's no like gradations to it. Nobody's really smarter than anybody else. It's just different. All of it is the perfect cog that fits into the cosmic mind machine that needs to function. It's a holistic thing. Another objection might be, but Leo, how can dumb matter and empty space be intelligent? That sounds stupid. Of course it sounds stupid, because you're just assuming that matter and space are dumb. Why are you assuming that they're dumb? Was that proven? Has science proved the stupidity of matter and space? No. In fact, you couldn't prove that if you wanted to. Doesn't make sense to prove it. Again, intelligence is the order with which this stuff is arranging itself spontaneously. And by the way, don't get it wrong. I'm not saying that there's a bearded man in the clouds who is the engineer behind this all. The bearded man in the clouds is actually formless. There's nothing there. In fact, what you see inside of yourself, if you turn your gaze inwards, you find emptiness there. That is the infinite intelligence we're talking about. It's right here. It's right before your eyes. It's not some fantastical land that you fly away to during a trip to experience intelligence. It's right here, right now. It's speaking to you. I'm speaking to you using infinite intelligence. Hello, you're using infinite intelligence to understand me. Hello, do you get it? Next question, Leo. How can intelligence exist without a body? It needs a body. Only if you assume it does. Why do you assume intelligence needs a body? Did science prove that to you? No. That was just a metaphysical assumption you started off with. So what I'm suggesting is you drop that assumption and you consider the possibility that maybe intelligence doesn't need a body. Why would it? After all, if the universe is an infinite mind, it has no body. Body is something it thinks into existence. Reality is something it thinks into existence. And intelligence is just a property of omnipresent consciousness. Another question. But Leo, if I have infinite intelligence, why can't I just materialize $1 million for myself? Of course, that's exactly what the ego wants. It wants to harness the infinite intelligence in order to wage wars, build better nuclear weapons, and materialize millions of dollars. Well, maybe there's more to the world than all that materialistic nonsense. Here's what you got to understand, is that, first of all, you're deeply unconscious and probably unawakened, so your connection to infinite intelligence is minuscule. You have infinite intelligence running through you, but it's very, channeled, very, very constricted, which is why you make mistakes, you do dumb stuff, all that. And still, even with all that, there's infinite intelligence in all the dumb stuff that you do. It's there for a reason. It's not an accident. All the dumb stuff you do and all the mistakes you make. But the reason you can't just materialize $1 million is because, well, look, actually, there's two ways to think about this. First of all, in a sense, you can. You can actually use your intellect to come up with an invention, patent that invention, and then sell that patent, which might be very used. Maybe you invent some new medicine or something, or some new power generation machine. And you can do that, and you can earn millions of dollars through the use of your intelligence. You can do that. People have been doing that for centuries, and people are doing it right now. There are many intelligent people who are using their intellect, their connection to infinite intelligence, to manifest millions of dollars in their life, and they're enjoying it. And you can become a part of that club. And in fact, the more you tap into infinite intelligence, the more that will be possible. But of course, that's not the question you really ask. What you really want is you want pure magic. You want to be able to just think $1 million into existing right here, right now. Why can't you do that? Well, because you're bound. You see, you're bound by physical laws, logical laws, and all this sort of stuff, because you're inside this matrix-like simulation. So you're part of the simulation right now. And your intelligence, even if you do become very, very awoken, your intelligence, you're still going to be human. Human intelligence is still limited. It's not even 1% of infinite intelligence. So whereas infinite intelligence could materialize things because it's that fucking intelligent, you are not that intelligent. You do not have the intelligence to circumvent the physical laws. If you did, you could, but you don't. Maybe one day, maybe in 1 million years, humans will get to that point. Maybe some super advanced artificial intelligence system that we construct will at some point be able to do that stuff, and that could be freaky. You think artificial intelligence is dangerous now under the materialist paradigm because it can somehow hack a nuclear network and launch nuclear weapons? Think about what can happen if the artificial intelligence is so intelligent, it's so tapped into infinite intelligence that it can actually materialize nuclear weapons out of thin air. Think about that. Now you see how dangerous it can really be. But also you have to understand that with infinite intelligence, when you access the infinite intelligence, you're also accessing infinite consciousness. And infinite consciousness also comes with flavors of infinite love. And so when you're becoming very conscious, you are becoming less and less selfish. You're not going to access infinite intelligence if you're very, very selfish. So it's sort of a self-protecting mechanism because if you could be very selfish and evil and access infinite intelligence, you could do a lot of damage. And the reason you can't is because you actually have to be selfless to access it. And once you're selfless, then you're probably not going to want to destroy billions of people with nuclear weapons. Although, who knows, maybe actually at a higher level of intelligence, you will see that mankind is a cancer upon the entire planet. And if we're not going to get our shit together, then maybe what needs to happen is that we're going to accidentally create this AI, which is going to then destroy us, create a blank slate, and then the AIs will rule the world. And maybe that's exactly what infinite intelligence you yourself have designed from the very, very beginning. You don't know because you don't have access to all that, because your intelligence is very far from infinite. So I want you to start to notice very practically that every part of reality exhibits extraordinary intelligence. This is like an exercise for you. I want you to walk around for the next week and notice the intelligence in everything. Notice the intelligence in your shower, when you're brushing your teeth, the design of your toothbrush, the computer you're using, the stuff you see on the sidewalk when you're walking down, even the bad stuff, the evil stuff. You see stupid people on television. You see Donald Trump, whatever, doing stupid stuff like they do every week. Notice the intelligence behind it. The deeper, larger, bigger picture intelligence. Start to see that. That requires you start to develop a certain kind of eye for the universe's infinite intelligence. You might say, oh, but Leo, but my toothbrush, that was designed by a human being. See the bigger picture. Yes, a human being designed your toothbrush, but who designed the human being? Where did the human being come from? Where did evolution come from? Where did the logical laws come from? Where did the universal laws come from? Where did the quarks and the atoms? Where did all that come from? It's all part of the whole design. Don't be so narrow-minded. Stop fragmenting little pieces. That human being who designed your toothbrush, how did he come about? There needed to be a mother and a father. They need to fall in love. What's the logic and the infinite intelligence that goes into human romance? All the complexity there, human romance. Who designed that? Look how it works. It works well enough that we're able to create billions of human beings who are able to make toothbrushes and computers and Facebook and Google and all this sorts of stuff that you take completely for granted. And how did that person designing your toothbrush come up with the idea for this great toothbrush design? It wasn't because of his little ego. He tapped into infinite intelligence. Some human being at some point had to invent a fucking toothbrush. That was a gigantic deal. That was like Einstein coming up with the general theory of relativity. It's not obvious at all that you can brush your fucking teeth with a brush made out of plastic and rubber and this and that and all these little bristles at these different angles. Someone had to come up with all that shit. It doesn't happen by itself. That's deeply intelligent stuff. That's the universe doing it. It's not humans doing it. It's the universe. A human doing something is the universe doing something. But of course, the universe is much more than just humans. Anything that a human can do is, by definition, something that the universe can do. You understand this? Because humans are the part of the universe. You're not separate from the universe. Every thought you think is the universe doing that stuff. When you get horny, that's the universe getting horny. When you get thirsty, that's the universe getting thirsty. When you have a brilliant idea, that's the universe getting a brilliant idea, using you as the substrate. See? Because infinite intelligence doesn't have any physical form. So if it wants to become tangible, if it wants to actualize, if it wants to take all of its sort of brilliant ideas, they're not even ideas because ideas still have form. If it wants to manifest itself, it needs to do so what we would call physically through some sort of form. Otherwise, it's just infinitely intelligent sort of all to itself, and then you don't know about it. So I want you to look around for the next week and start to notice the artistry. It's like looking at a beautiful painting. You know, if you take a stupid person, speaking of which, if you take a dumb person and you show him some beautiful painting by a master, by Picasso or something like that, he's not going to be able to see the beauty in it. To him, he's just going to say, oh, I could do that myself. Of course, no, you can't. To see the artistry, the beauty of it, you need to develop an eye. You can actually take art history classes and develop this eye. It's very fascinating how it develops. You start off with no eye, but then you develop an eye, you make fine distinctions, you can start to see the beauty and the genius of painting and art. And of course, not just in art, you can do this with sculpture, you can do this with architecture, you can do this with music, you can do this with literature, movies, anything. But I want you to do it with physical reality. Start to see it. The problem is that if you look too logically at the world, if you're always analyzing it and breaking it down like a left-brained autistic person, which many scientists sort of are, then you miss the bigger picture. You miss the artistry. The intelligence is not in the fragmentation, but it's in the whole. It's how all the fragments fit together so perfectly that you see the artistry of it. I want you to start to notice that. I want you to walk down the street and start to notice even the ugly stuff. You see a empty Coke can, some garbage lying on the side of the street, and you might say, oh, look at that, some animal, he threw that down there. How dare he not care for the environment, nada, yada, yada. But think about the infinite intelligence of that Coke can lying there on the sidewalk. Think about the intelligence that went into producing the can. All the economic systems that led to it getting created and purchased. And all the gravity that's holding that can down, and how that can fits into the larger ecosystem, how some human being is going to actually collect that can, like some homeless person is going to walk by, pick up that can to that homeless person is worth 5 cents for recycling. He's going to take it to a recycling center. He's going to recycle it, get his 5 cents. He's going to use that 5 cents to feed himself that night and not starve. And then that recycled can is going to go to some recycling center. Some other human being invented a recycling center that's going to recycle this can, use that can, the metal in that can, to produce some recycled aluminum thing, maybe for an airplane or for a car, some aluminum part. And think of how that is like the circle of life at work. So this thing that you think is beautiful that personally your little ego doesn't like because it's ugly, it's a can. But think about how it all fits fucking together. Where did the can come from? The materials from the can came from the cosmos, from early stars that exploded. Think of the intelligence that had to go into creating those stars so that then they would explode at the right time. All those dust particles of atoms, they would all have to congeal together into some other star. That would have to explode heavier elements from carbon to oxygen to this, to aluminum. Aluminum's a pretty heavy element. That then comes to Earth, all congeals together, billions of years of evolution. Then humankind has to develop machinery and metal forging and aluminum and then construct these cans. Some guy had to come up with a recipe for Coca-Cola, which people love to drink, such that there are billions of people on the whole planet drinking this stuff, such that this guy purchased this can so he can throw it on the sidewalk. See the intelligence of that. That's not an accident. You guys like to play video games, I assume, because most of you are pretty young. So maybe you can resonate with this. Seeing intelligence in the world at large, in the universe, is like admiring the design of a great video game. You know the games. These games that come out once every couple of years, maybe once every 10 years, once a decade, some brilliant masterpiece game comes out. It's a 10 out of 10. It's perfect. It's so brilliantly designed. It all works so smoothly. It's fun. It's amazing. It's got amazing graphics, right? You know this. You get that game from the game store, you pop it into your PlayStation or your Xbox or something, and you're playing it. And for that first hour, you're just blown away. It's like, oh, wow. Because you've played so many games, so you know all the shitty games. But this game is like, it's a work of genius. It's the intelligence. What you're admiring is the intelligence of the art, of the design, of the program, all of it coming together seamlessly, perfectly to make the whole. So as you become a connoisseur of gaming, or of movies, or of writing, or of art, or anything else, you start to think like a game designer, for example. You're walking through this space in this world and you're seeing it for the first time. But as you develop the sort of game designer's eye, you start to see like, oh yeah, look, I know that designer put this thing there. This tree prevents me from turning left when I should have turned right, or vice versa. And then, oh look, they placed that treasure right over there so that I can see it. And they clearly marked it so it's obvious to me so I don't get confused, I don't get lost. You see how all of it connects in the interface and the graphics and this, and it's all being telegraphed, and somebody invented that. Some team of dozens of designers and hundreds of artists and programmers invented that. That's a little microcosm of how the entire universe works. These people, because I was a game designer for a short while, and early in my career, so I'm speaking from experience here, and this is how game designers think. They start to analyze these games, and they see, and they're drawn to this. Why do people become game designers? Actually, it's because being a game designer allows you to play God. That's a huge appeal. You get to create your own universes, think them into existence, and then materialize them. That's a very rewarding process. You're acting like a god. And actually, you are. You're participating in God's work. Now you might say, oh, Leo, but these are just designers. These are just designers. Of course human beings can invent. No, not of course. Don't take this for granted. What's actually happening is that infinite intelligence is working through these designers, inspiring these artists, designers, programmers to come together, to work really hard. They crunch for hundreds of hours, hundreds of man years. They work on these games to put them all together, test them, make sure it all works perfectly. How are they doing that? not through their little egos. If it's a great game, it's not done through ego. Egos produce shitty games. The best games are produced by tapping into infinite intelligence. And of course, not just games, all works of art. That's what you are fundamentally as an artist, is you are playing God. That's why it's so rewarding, because you are God playing God. But of course, you don't realize that. Most artists don't. And of course, you're limited as an artist. And that's why it's so difficult, because for artists, those genius artists that can tap into infinite intelligence, they have so much creative potential that they can see and they can envision. These are visionaries. But the challenge is, how do you materialize it? That's the real challenge. For the artist, the ideal would be to be able to not even have to pick up a paintbrush and just think a painting into existence without even clicking a mouse. That's still too indirect. That would be the essence, the epitome, the ultimate level that an artist can aspire to. And of course, that's exactly what God does. That's exactly what absolute infinity can do, because it's infinitely intelligent, but you are not. You're limited. So see, what's happening is that, God is a bit of a lazy guy. So what he does is he doesn't create everything himself. He delegates. He delegates a lot of his work to human beings. So God, to experience what it's like to actually play God, what God will do, because God is formless, is it will incarnate itself into a human form. Then that human form will get inspired by what it sees around it. Because see, it's hard for God to get inspired because God knows everything. So you have limited knowledge, you get inspired by stuff, and then you want to imitate. You want to imitate nature, you're inspired by it, and then you go and you dedicate your whole life building these technical skills to do it, and then you become good and you get this satisfaction of creation. But what that's actually happening is that God is using infinite intelligence, channeling it through you such that you are now God's paintbrush. The human body is literally God's paintbrush to create this shit. Whether it's games, music, societies, inventions, engineering, computer programming, or self-actualization videos. That's all this is. This is a puppet. I'm a puppet here. You see, I'm a puppet doing this work. Start to see that. Start to see that the design of a video game is not accidental. And the design of the reality within which the video game is happening is also not accidental. And this does not contradict evolution, because notice, video games are designed, but they also evolve. Notice how video games have evolved over the last 30 years. It's incredible. It's incredible the evolution that video games have undergone. Think about Pong, think about Pac-Man, think about the first Mario World, think about the Nintendo 64, think about the PlayStation 3, the PlayStation 4, think about virtual reality, think about where it's going, think about all the graphics, all the design evolutions, the evolution of the user interfaces, all of that had to evolve. It built upon itself. And it was also designed. Both are happening simultaneously. Not just in video games, everywhere. There is no distinctions and limitations. It's happening everywhere. Evolution is happening everywhere. It's not happening within DNA. It's happening everywhere. Everything is evolving. So in conclusion, I don't want you to just believe me. Yes, it sounds all good and nice and fun and interesting and philosophical, and maybe even I have convinced you of some stuff here, but that's all beside the point. This is not something to believe. This is not something to take on as a dogma. I'm just presenting you with a possibility. The possibility that you can discover some amazing stuff about the nature of reality, which you never imagined was possible to discover. And then you can run with it. If you're a scientist, if you're a mathematician, you can use what I'm talking about. You can leverage it. You can find techniques for tapping into infinite intelligence such that then you can create, you can become a better God, a better mini God, to create whatever mathematical theorems you want, whatever engineering inventions, all this, you can get such a huge practical competitive advantage over all of your colleagues in your field that these IQ tests and all this nonsense is just going to be ridiculous. While all your colleagues are talking about IQ tests and bitching and moaning about how their IQ isn't high enough, you can develop a connection with infinite intelligence such that you can become the next Einstein, the next Picasso, the next Steven Spielberg or George Lucas or whatever artist you admire, whatever engineer, whatever human being you admire. So what I'm talking about is not just philosophy or interesting abstract metaphysics that you can become conscious of, but it's also very practical. We're talking about the essence, the existential essence of creativity, in case you haven't realized. So, in conclusion, you can become directly conscious of infinite intelligence, and you can also develop ways to tap into it practically more than you've ever imagined possible. And you can have such incredible creative ideas that it'll completely blow your mind. You'll have more creative ideas than you will have the capacity to actualize. How to do that, I'll talk about in future episodes, how to develop a connection with infinite intelligence. But for now, I want you just to focus on becoming conscious of infinite intelligence first. You got to start with that. Then we'll talk about how to cultivate a connection. So first, I want you to start to contemplate what is intelligence. Think about that question. I want you to become very, very curious and open-minded about it. Drop your dogmas and your scientific models and paradigms, whatever you thought, forget about that, and just be curious. Notice inside yourself, like, yeah, look, I'm thinking and I'm being intelligent myself. How is that happening? It's very mysterious. I can't put my finger on it. So that's where it starts. That's where the questioning starts. Then start to question the materialist paradigm to death, which I've helped you do through many episodes already. Then start to take seriously the possibility that intelligence is fundamental and not just an emergent high-level phenomena. Fundamental, at the very base. Before molecules existed, there was infinite intelligence. Before time and space existed, there was infinite intelligence. Before the Big Bang, there was infinite intelligence. Start to take that possibility seriously. Whatever obstacles you have or judgments against that, drop them. And then, of course, you can use meditation, you can use yoga, but for this one, I highly recommend psychedelics. Do some deep trips. And when you're tripping, before you trip, set the intention. Set the intention and ask the question, what is intelligence? And you could even frame it as you asking the universe, why are you intelligent? Tell me why you're intelligent. And see what comes up. You might be in for a rude awakening. And I really wish that you get to the bottom of it one day so that you can experience the joy and horror that I experienced in stumbling upon infinite intelligence. All right, that's it. I'm done here. This was a long one. Whew. Please click the like button for me. Come check out my website, Actualized.org, right there. I've got the blog where I'm posting stuff all the time, the forum, the book list, the life purpose course. Those can help you out. The life purpose course is going to be very important if you want to really connect with infinite intelligence because, to make an effective connection with infinite intelligence, yes, you have to develop yourself metaphysically and spiritually, but also you need to develop technical skills and you need to develop a mastery in something. You need to have a sense of direction of what you're going to accomplish in life. And for that, you need a sense of purpose. You need to identify your values. So that's what the course is about. And also, I updated the book list just recently, last week. So go check out all the new books that I've added. I've added about 17 new books, a lot of them about consciousness, metaphysics, epistemology, yoga. I've added some books about yoga. Yeah, check them out. The books that I keep adding to my list now are the more advanced, sort of metaphysically type of books. They're deeper than your normal self-help books. I try not to add the kind of self-help books that everybody knows about. I try to find the really interesting, rare type of stuff where ultimately the stuff I want to add to my book list in the future is like, I want to add books like you read this book and this is the fucking life-changing book. This whole book will change your whole life if you read it and then you read it again and again and again and you keep following up on it. Now, not all the books on my book list are like that. I have over 200 books there, but a lot of them are. There's at least 50 or 100, I would say, 5-star rated books that I put up there, which are like life-changing. Like this stuff will completely change all your paradigms and everything you thought was possible in life. So I recommend you go check that out. And stick with me with Actualized.org because, hey, we still got a lot of deep topics to talk about. The evolution topic is going to be very interesting. I'm really excited to work on that one, but it's going to take some work to put the information together, to organize it. And then we're gonna have other topics like that. We're gonna talk about what is language. We're gonna talk about what is science. And man, I feel like just now I'm starting to get comfortable enough in my body and my ability to speak that we can really address some of these very, very deep topics in a way that's going to make sense to you, in a way that's going to be fun and relatable. So stick around for all that.